Welcome to video 3 in our series, Decisive Days that shook the 2024 presidential election. The turning point for President Biden's re-election campaign came during a highly anticipated debate with former President Donald Trump. This debate was seen as a crucial opportunity for President Biden to solidify his standing and reassure voters of his capabilities.
It is entirely possible that Thursday's CNN presidential debate decides the election.
The stage was set for a dramatic showdown between the incumbent president and his chief rival, and the nation was watching closely. President Biden, who at 81 is the oldest sitting president in history, had already been facing concerns about his age before the CNN debate against former President Trump on June 27th. For much of the 90-minute debate, President Biden seemed to be on the defensive. Early on, Biden's responses were confusing, and after losing his train of thought, he bizarrely concluded one answer by saying,
eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
As for Trump, although he was praised by Republicans for his seemingly strong debate performance, he repeated lie after lie after lie, including this doozy on abortion.
They're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby.
And before we list off Trump's flood of falsehoods, let's run through Biden's misstatements, just so we're fair. Biden claimed that he was the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Correction, troops have died on his watch. President Biden claimed that there was a $15 per shot cap on insulin in Medicare. Actually, it's a $35 per month cap. President Biden claimed a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. Correction, that's a $2,000 cap. Biden claimed the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's not true. President Biden claimed that unemployment was at 15% when he took office. Correction, actually it was 6.4%. President Biden claimed that Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. And while Trump has many flaws, there is no evidence that he wanted to get rid of Social Security. President Biden claimed that billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. Actually, it's much higher. It might still be too low, but it's higher than 8.2%. President Biden claimed that Trump told Americans to inject some bleach during the COVID crisis. That was a weird event, but he didn't really firmly advise people to do that. Trump's meandering into whether or not people should inject bleach was a pretty strange event in the briefing room, but he didn't actually specifically advise people to do that. President Biden claimed that Border Patrol endorsed him. Actually, it was the union that represents Border Control that endorsed him. President Biden's claims were sloppy, but the whole debate was sloppy. It was a mess. However, if one thing that Donald Trump does, he lies, he gaslights, and let's just rattle them off. Trump claimed that some Democratic states allow babies to be executed after birth. Killing people is not allowed. Trump claimed that every legal scholar wanted Roe v. Wade overturned and abortion policy returned to the states. That is emphatically not true. Trump claimed that everybody, even Democrats, wanted Roe overturned. That is just not true. Trump claimed that the U.S. currently has the biggest budget deficit ever. Correction, that is not true. Actually, the biggest budget deficit was under former President Trump in 2020. Trump claimed that the U.S. has a record trade deficit with China. Again, the largest record deficit was under Trump in 2018. Trump claimed that Biden gets a lot of money from China. That is emphatically not true. Trump claimed that there were no terrorist attacks under his presidency. Actually, there were multiple attacks under his presidency. Trump claimed that Iran didn't fund Hamas, Hezbollah, or other terror groups under him. Iran didn't take a pause because Donald Trump was president. Trump claimed that Biden wants to quadruple people's taxes. That is untrue. Trump claimed that the U.S. has provided more aid to Ukraine than Europe. Europe is providing more funding for Ukraine than the United States. Trump claimed that the U.S. has provided $200 billion in aid to Ukraine. That is just not true. The U.S. has provided a lot of aid, more along the lines of maybe half that, maybe $110 billion. Trump claimed that 18 or 19 million people have crossed the border under Biden. Again, that's just not true. It's much, much less. It's probably more around 5 million people. Donald Trump claimed that many migrants are from prisons or mental institutions. Again, just not true. Trump said, referring to Biden, that he's the one that killed people with a bad border and flooding hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. There is no evidence of that. Now over to January 6th. Trump claimed that Nancy Pelosi turned down his offer of 10,000 National Guard troops on January 6th. There is no evidence of that. Absolutely none. She never got such an offer. Donald Trump claimed that Pelosi acknowledges she turned down the troops. Again, a flat-out lie. Trump claimed that Trump deployed the National Guard to Minneapolis in 2020 following the death of George Floyd. Actually, that was the Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz who deployed the National Guard to the city. And getting back to the election fraud claims, Trump claims that there was ridiculous fraud in the 2020 election. And this is withering and tiring and immiserating. There were 62 court cases that debunked such fraud. Donald Trump claimed that NATO was going out of business before he took office. Again, this is not true. It is true that the United States wanted certain member states of NATO to contribute more in their military, but there was no evidence at all that NATO was going out of business. Trump claimed that the U.S. is paying 100% of NATO before he was elected. It is true that the United States pays a lot for NATO because we get a lot in return. In fact, I was born in an American military hospital in Germany. The United States probably pays about 71% on NATO, but we get a lot for it, but not 100%. Trump claimed that it was Trump, not Biden, who is the one who lowered insulin prices in Medicare. To be fair, Trump did it for some people, but Biden did it for far more people. Trump claimed that Biden indicted him. Correction, this is untrue. The New York Attorney General, Alvin Bragg, indicted Donald Trump in a state, not a federal court. The federal government had nothing to do with it. Trump claimed that Europe has no U.S. cars and won't accept them. Again, this is just not true. Trump claimed that food prices quadrupled under Biden. That is a wild exaggeration. There have been a rise in food prices, but not a quadrupling of prices. Trump claimed that Biden made up the idea he called dead service members suckers and losers. Again, this has been verified. It was former Chief of Staff John Kelly who corroborated the Atlantic's reporting that Trump had made such awful remarks about dead service members. Trump claimed that Biden called black people super predators for 10 years. Correction, Biden never used that term, although Hillary Clinton did. Trump claimed that his tax cut was the largest in U.S. history. This is not true, although Biden did once claim that Trump's were the largest. In fact, Ronald Reagan's tax cuts were much higher. Trump claimed that China and others stopped buying from Iran under pressure from him. Again, this is untrue. Trump claimed that he created Veterans' Choice Program. Actually, that was former President Obama who signed that into law in 2014. Trump claimed that Biden got rid of Veterans' Choice. Correction, Biden has not done that. Trump's claimed that we had the greatest economy in the history of our country and we have never done so well. Correction. By just about any important measure, the economy under Donald Trump has not done as well as it did under Presidents Truman, Johnson, and Clinton. It's just not accurate. And firstly, the pandemic triggered a massive recession during Trump's presidency, leading to the government to borrow $3.1 trillion in 2020 to stabilize the economy. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the civilian labor force participation rate decreased during the Trump administration. Trump left the White House with fewer jobs than when he entered. That's a rare feat for a president. Even setting aside the pandemic-related issues, economic growth averaged 2.67% under Trump's first 3 years. That's decent, but it's nowhere near the 4% growth averaged under Bill Clinton's 2 terms from 1993 to 2001, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. In fact, growth has been stronger under Biden so far than it was under Trump. And while Trump did see unemployment rate drop to 3.5% before the pandemic, the labor force participation for people aged 25 to 54, the core of the U.S. working population, was higher under Clinton. The participation rate has also been higher under Biden than it was under Trump. Trump often touts how low inflation was under his administration, noting that gasoline prices fell to as low as $1.77 a gallon. However, this price drop occurred during a pandemic lockdown when few people were driving. The low prices were a result of a global health crisis, not Trump's policies. Trump claimed that on January 6th we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever on January 6th. Donald Trump's method of answering the questions about January 6th was to divert and distract. Again, his diversion is just not true. Trump did cut some taxes, but there have been periods where taxes have been much lower. And of course, Trump on January 6th said they talk about the relatively small amount of people that went to the Capitol. In many cases were ushered in by police. This is absolutely false. I was there. The attack on the U.S. Capitol was the deadliest assault on the seat of American power in over 200 years. This has been thoroughly documented by videos, photographs, and people who were there, and thousands of people who descended on the Capitol in what became a brutal scene of hand-to-hand combat with police, and I got punched right in the face by those people. In an internal memo on March 7th, 2023, U.S. Capitol Police Chief J. Thomas Manger said that the allegation that our officers helped the rioters and acted as tour guides is outrageous and false. A Capitol Police spokesperson confirmed the memo's authenticity to the Associated Press. More than 1,400 people have been charged with federal crimes stemming from the riot. More than 850 people have pleaded guilty to crimes, and 200 others have been convicted at trial. This onslaught of lies is exhausting, and it's almost impossible to keep up with them as lies move fast and fact-checking is slow. Heather Cox Richardson summed up Trump's strategy and shower of lies this way. She wrote, "This was not a debate. It was Trump using a technique that actually has a formal name, the gish galop, although I suspect he comes by it naturally. It's a rhetorical technique in which someone throws out a fast string of lies, non sequiturs, and specious arguments, so many that it's impossible to fact-check or read in the amount of time it took to say them. Trying to figure out how to respond makes an opponent look confused because they don't know where to start grappling with the flood that has just hit them, and it is a form of gaslighting." As a journalist who has endured Trump's gaslighting at the White House from him and his minions, I'm astonished that Biden's team didn't prepare him adequately for that form of verbal abuse. And we saw what we saw, and we can't unsee what we saw. However, Biden's debate performance intensified doubts, not only about his ability to win against Trump, but also about his capacity to execute his duties as president for another term even now. The debate damaged the Biden reelection campaign beyond recovery. The initial reaction from political analysts and from media was swift and brutal. It also set off a chain reaction within the Democratic Party. Pundits from across the political spectrum criticized President Biden's performance, questioning his readiness for another term. The contrast with Trump's aggressive and confident demeanor only highlighted President Biden's struggles. While Trump was criticized for his usual bluster and just wave of falsehoods, Biden's performance raised more fundamental concerns about his ability to effectively campaign and govern even now. The Biden campaign was thrown into disarray. Senior advisors and campaign staffers scrambled to control the damage, issuing statements emphasizing Biden's policy strengths and experience. However, the narrative was already taking shape. Within hours, prominent Democrats and party donors began expressing doubts privately, and some even publicly. The debate had exposed vulnerabilities that were hard to ignore. Calls for Biden to reconsider his candidacy grew louder, and discussions about potential alternatives gained traction. The debate not only undermined Biden's campaign, but also sparked a broader conversation about the future direction of the Democratic Party as the election drew nearer. And that wraps up this video in our series. In the next video, we're going to talk about the internal and external pressures on President Biden to leave the campaign.